Between 1841 and 1847, the Hargrove plantation in Bourbon County, Kentucky, recorded the sale of 61 enslaved people across 11 different counties. Not one of those sales appears in any official state registry. Not $1 of the resulting income was reported to the county tax assessor. And not one person, not a single lawyer, sheriff, or church elder in Bourbon County asked a single question about where the money went, until a woman named Celestine did. She was not a lawyer. She had never been permitted to attend school. She had been the plantation's bookkeeper's assistant since she was 14 years old, not because anyone asked her to be, but because she had quietly, methodically taught herself to read the numbers faster than the man whose job it was. She kept no diary. She wrote nothing down in her own name. But in the spring of 1847, a ledger disappeared from the Hargrove estate office. It was found 6 months later in the desk of a federal land commissioner in Frankfort, Kentucky, wrapped in burlap, tied with twine, and accompanied by a single unsigned note that read, "Every figure in this book is a lie. I can prove it. Count the names." The commissioner counted the names. Then he sat down, removed his hat, and did not move for a very long time. What Celestine had done, alone, in secret, over 6 years, was not just an act of courage. It was the most precise financial audit ever conducted in the antebellum American South, and it brought down one of the most protected families in Kentucky history. This is her file. It has been sealed for 177 years. Tonight, we open it. This channel investigates the histories that were deliberately buried, cases sealed because the truth was too dangerous to acknowledge. Hit subscribe. We open a new sealed file every day. Tomorrow, we're releasing a case from Louisiana, 1859, a man who memorized the face of every witness before they disappeared. That file is already waiting. Drop a comment right now. What state are you from? Because what happened in Kentucky in 1847 may not be as far from your home as you think. Bourbon County, Kentucky, 1841. The Hargrove estate sat on 412 acres of bluegrass farmland, 11 miles outside the town of Paris. The main house was white-columned and wide-porched, the kind of building that looked, from a distance, like respectability itself. Up close, the paint was thicker on the front than the sides, applied generously where visitors could see it, left to peel where they could not. The plantation ran tobacco, corn, and livestock. It employed 22 white workers and held, at any given time, between 40 and 60 enslaved people, though the number fluctuated in ways that the county records never quite captured. That fluctuation was the first thing Celestine noticed. She was 23 years old in 1841. She had worked in the estate's main house since she was a girl, first as a domestic servant, then, gradually, as the person who organized the correspondence of the plantation's overseer, a man named Calhoun Pruitt. Pruitt was not an educated man. He could read slowly and add with his fingers. He needed someone who could do neither of those things slowly. Celestine could read a ledger column in the time it took most men to find their spectacles. She never told anyone this. The investigator who eventually documented Celestine's case was a federal land commissioner named Edmund Garrity, a dry, meticulous man from Cincinnati who had spent 20 years auditing property transfers across the Ohio River states. Garrity was not an abolitionist. He did not arrive in Kentucky looking for injustice. His first entry about the case, written in November 1847, is blunt to the point of being almost cold. Received an anonymous parcel containing a plantation ledger from Bourbon County. Initial examination suggests systemic falsification of property transfer records over a period of approximately 6 years, forwarded to the State Land Office with notation. We'll follow up if warranted. He followed up. It took him 4 months to understand what he was actually looking at. It took him another 2 months to admit in writing what it meant. His final report, filed in March 1848 and immediately classified by the Kentucky Land Office, runs to 214 pages. The first 200 pages are figures, tables, and cross-referenced transaction records. The last 14 pages are something else entirely. They begin with a single line. "I have been doing this work for 20 years. I have never seen anything like this. I am not certain I have the language for it." We'll come back to those 14 pages. First, you need to understand what Celestine actually found. It began with a discrepancy so small that any reasonable person would have dismissed it as a clerical error. In the spring of 1841, Celestine was organizing the month's correspondence when she noticed that a man named Thomas, listed in the estate's internal labor records as field hand, adult male, valued at $900, appeared twice in the same week's outgoing documents. Once in a letter to a cotton broker in Louisville, once in a shipping manifest to a land agent in Memphis. Same name, same physical description, same estimated age. 2 different transactions, 2 different buyers, 2 different prices. She said nothing. She filed both documents in their correct places. She returned to her other work, but she had already begun counting. Over the next 3 months, she identified 7 similar discrepancies. People appearing in 2 places at once. Sales recorded at one price internally, a different price in external correspondence. Names that appeared in the ledger's labor column one week and vanished without any corresponding sale record the next. The plantation was not just selling people. It was selling them twice, collecting payment from one buyer, then reporting a different sale to the county, or reporting no sale at all. The difference between what was collected and what was reported went somewhere. It did not appear anywhere in the plantation's official accounts. Celestine did not yet know where it went, but she knew with the certainty of someone who had spent years reading these numbers that the gap was not accidental. What Celestine was beginning to piece together was not just fraud, it was a system, deliberate, layered, and protected by every institution in Bourbon County. If this story is giving you chills, share this video with a friend who loves dark history. Hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Let's discover together what she found next.
6 years. That is how long Celestine documented the Hargrove estate's financial fraud before she acted. She did not write anything down, not in her own name, not anywhere that could be found and used against her. Instead, she built the record inside the existing system. When she organized correspondence, she kept duplicates in the correct files. When she transcribed ledger entries, she noted inconsistencies in the margins in the overseer's own handwriting style, small marks that looked like his corrections, not hers. When names disappeared without sale records, she cross-referenced them against the estate's tax returns, which passed through her hands every spring before going to the county assessor. She was not just documenting the fraud, she was reconstructing it in a form that someone outside the plantation could follow. By 1845, she had identified a pattern that extended far beyond the estate itself. The Hargrove family was not operating alone. The ledger that arrived on Edmund Garrity's desk in November 1847 contained 312 pages. Garrity spent the first week simply cataloging what was in it. In his notes from that period, he describes his process, cross-referencing the estate's internal records against the county tax filings he was able to obtain, looking for the discrepancies Celestine's anonymous note had promised. He found them. 61 undeclared sales over 6 years, transactions that had generated, by his calculation, somewhere between $40,000 and $55,000 in unreported income. That was significant. That alone was a federal matter. But on the 9th day of his review, Garrity noticed something that stopped him entirely. Every fraudulent entry in the ledger, every double sale, every phantom transfer, every unreported name was marked with a small notation in the margin. Not a word, not a letter, a tiny symbol, like a small horizontal dash placed precisely at the start of the relevant line. He went back through all 312 pages, every fraudulent entry, every single one, marked. Celestine had not just documented the fraud, she had flagged every compromised record in a way that was invisible to anyone who wasn't looking for it, so that the person who received the ledger would be able to find the evidence without missing a single entry. Garrity writes, "I counted the marks. There were 61. I counted the fraudulent transactions. There were 61. I set down my pen. I sat for some time. I could not account for what I was feeling." He was not an emotional man. He did not use language like that. He used it that day. In the section of his final report where Garrity attempts to reconstruct Celestine's identity, he never learned her name. She is referred to throughout his documents only as the informant. He includes one passage that has nothing to do with numbers. He had interviewed by that point several people who had worked on or near the Hargrove estate. One of them, a free black woman named Ada, who had formerly been employed as a laundress on a neighboring property, described Celestine in a single paragraph that Garrity recorded verbatim. She never looked worried. That was the thing about her. In all those years, she never looked like someone carrying something. She looked like someone who had already decided how things would end. The only time I ever saw her face change was once in the fall, I don't know which year, when a wagon left the property. She stood at the edge of the kitchen yard and watched it go. She didn't cry, she just watched until it was gone. Then she went back inside. Garrity does not comment on this passage in his report. He simply moves on to the next section. But he had kept Ada's testimony. He did not have to include it. It proved nothing. He included it anyway. Think about what this means for a moment. Celestine had no legal standing, no protection, no ally she could name openly. If the ledger had been discovered before she removed it, the consequences would have been immediate and total. She did this anyway, for 6 years, not in a single moment of courage, in 6 years of daily, quiet, invisible precision. Garrity's investigation, once it moved beyond the ledger, uncovered something the Hargrove family had not anticipated: a paper trail. The unreported income from 61 fraudulent transactions had not simply disappeared. It had been funneled in increments through a network of land purchases in 3 counties, Bourbon, Scott, and Fayette, registered under the names of family associates, clergymen, and at least 2 local magistrates. One of those magistrates was the same man who would have presided over any legal case brought against the Hargrove estate. The system had not just tolerated the fraud, the system had been built to protect it. Garrity filed his report with the Kentucky Land Office in March 1848. The Land Office classified it within 10 days. A copy, the only surviving copy, was sent to the Federal Land Commissioner's Office in Washington and filed in a box labeled Miscellaneous Property Disputes, Kentucky, 1848. It remained there unread for 127 years. It was rediscovered in 1977 by a graduate student researching antebellum property law. She did not initially understand what she had found. It took her 3 years to reconstruct the full scope of Garrity's investigation. She published her findings in 1981 in a journal with a circulation of 400 people. The Hargrove name is not listed in any Kentucky historical record as having been associated with financial fraud. The file was suppressed, the family's name was protected, but the ledger still existed, and the 61 marks were still there. If this story is moving you, share it. This is exactly the kind of history that disappears when no one talks about it. Hit subscribe. We open a new sealed file every day. Here's what happened to Garrity and what we believe happened to Celestine.
Edmund Garrity filed his classified report in March 1848. He retired from the Federal Land Commissioner's office in April 1848. His retirement was not scheduled. He had been due to serve another 4 years. His personal papers, donated by his family to the Cincinnati Historical Society in 1902, contain almost nothing from the period after April 1848. He lived another 19 years. He wrote extensive correspondence about property law, family matters, and local politics. He never mentioned the Hargrove case again, except once. In a letter to his brother, dated December 1848, he writes about nothing in particular for 3 pages: winter weather, a neighbor's illness, the price of grain. Then, at the bottom of the 3rd page, in handwriting that his brother later described as looking different from his usual hand, smaller, more careful, he writes, "I have been thinking about a case I worked on this past year. I am not permitted to discuss the particulars. I will only say that I was given something to do, and I did it to the best of my ability, and it was not enough. I think about the person who gave it to me. I think they knew it might not be enough. I think they did it anyway. I am not sure I have ever done anything that required that kind of clarity." He never wrote about it again. The Hargrove estate operated until 1862, when the family sold the property and relocated to St. Louis. The 61 people whose transactions were flagged in Celestine's ledger were never individually identified by Garrity's investigation. The records were too fragmented, the names too incomplete. The 1977 graduate student, her name was Dr. Patricia Holloway, and she spent 30 years trying to recover those names, was able to confirm the identity of 9 of them through cross-referenced census records, church documents, and Freedmen's Bureau files compiled after the Civil War. 9 out of 61. Dr. Holloway died in 2009. Her research files are held at the University of Kentucky. They are available to the public. They are rarely requested. Celestine's name does not appear in any official record. Garrity never learned it. Dr. Holloway never found it. We do not know what happened to her after the ledger disappeared. We do not know if she was safe. We do not know if she knew that Garrity had received the ledger, that he had counted the marks, that he had understood. We do not know if she ever found out that the report was suppressed. What we know is this: she built something precise enough to survive 129 years in an unlabeled box. She built it knowing she might never see what it became. She built it in a system designed specifically to prevent her from building anything at all. If you held that ledger in your hands right now, if you could feel the weight of 6 years pressed into 312 pages, would you understand what it cost her to let it go? She signed nothing, but every page carries her name. Subscribe to the sealed files for the hidden histories they tried to erase. Hit the bell. We open a new sealed file every day. Tomorrow's case is already waiting. Don't miss what history buried.